All right, we are live, and this is Rishabh Goel and the Inquisitive podcast with our second episode on the study abroad dream with the one and only Sumeet Jain. Sumeet Jain is the CEO of Yocket, India's largest community for study abroad. In fact, his community has a significant chunk of its audience from various folks from emerging markets as well as mature markets across the world. Sumit has seen the study abroad dream closely over the past almost 10 years, if I'm not wrong. And I would love to discuss this topic, especially with a couple of new developments over the past couple of months, such as the Biden presidency, COVID vaccine coming out, and now enhanced international mobility in the future outlook. So, Sumit, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I do want to preface our whole conversation today with the fact that I've known Sumit for many years. I've had lots of discussions on this topic and similar interests, and always enjoyed his nuances, his takes on some very complicated and challenging discussion points. And we'll try to address as many of them possible as we can. So starting off, Sumik, I think the one question as your professionals in the study abroad space, from a very ethical perspective, as both of us are Indians and we do want the best for our country. When we help students from India specifically go abroad, have you ever thought this question like, am I actually doing the best for my country, that is India? While I might be doing the best for the student or the aspirant, but what about the country? Is it a brain gain or is it a brain drain from the country's ecosystem?
Thanks for asking this, Rishabh. A lot of people do ask me this, and uh, I believe that what is a country? I think country is about the people, right? And
Hmm.
if you're not having those people to rise up, I don't think the country can rise up. So, if you look at it at a very micro level, you might think that okay, the person is going out and he's doing good for himself, but the country is lagging behind. But then you look at a whole much larger picture, look at it much long term, and you'll see that this is actually much more beneficial for the country. It's much beneficial for India than it's for the hosting nation where students are going and studying. Because in the long run, it's the education. If you with the education that the students are getting, with the education, the experience, they're getting they're getting a lot more exposure. They're getting a lot more experience, and it really helps them to I would say rise up in the ladder. And when they are doing that, it's much easier uh, for the country where they belong to rise up. So it's not such a simple, easy, I think black and white answer which I can give you, but I can tell you various perspectives to look at it from. So one perspective, if you look at it,
Hmm.
if you've seen there will be it's something similar to urbanization or as well. Like you would see a lot of people from villages move to towns and cities. But at that time, I don't think we are questioning if it's a brain gain or brain drain. We know that the person is going for good. He's rising up, and with him rising up, his family rises up, and you will often see that that people of the same village, same community, tend to
Hmm.
get attracted to that, and they also rise up. And there will be a lot more development which comes to that specific village when that community rises up.
Hmm.
So, and it's the same thing if you look at it at a much larger thing, and that people from India could be from any part of the city, when they're going and they're doing well, one, they're doing well for themselves, they are doing well for the community as well, and they become a great example for a lot of people. It's not just that one person going abroad is making a difference only to his life. He becomes a great role model for a lot more people to come. And you'll see that that's why certain pockets start getting more students who are aspiring. So that's where
Hmm.
the role models come in. So now when that happens, uh, of course, a lot of them would be moving there. They would be studying there. They might even want to settle down there. even if a fraction of it comes back, even a fraction of them come back, I think it's a
Hmm.
great win for India, and that's happening. So
Oh,
what
okay.
happens is we look at it in a very small time frame. We look at it at very I would say, like, isolated cases. We can't do that. If you're looking at the whole, again, it's Rome was not built in a day, so you can't expect that a country to develop in a day. And the education system is, I think, one of the last thing that gets developed. So expecting that
Why
the
do you
education system,
Why would you say that?
yeah, because I think education system is something which, it's only after you see a lot of like, if you see look at any of the developed nations today, I would say, if you see, the UK was the first ones which had great universities. Uh,
Hmm.
Very recent, and if you see in the last 2 centuries, you would have seen that the US has started getting great universities. And now if you see, China is getting some good universities coming in there. They're pouring in money for education there. So universities majorly in developed countries are a place for research, not
Hmm.
just to not I would not say that they are not there just to cater to students. They're there to cater to the professors as well, to help them with their research. And when their professors are helping them with the research, there's a good amount of fund that's required. And the professors are then also helping out students to learn, and students are helping professors with the research. So the research allocation, money budget that is allocated to research is something which comes last, I would say, in any economy. It's not the first thing that someone would put money in research. If you
Got
and you
it.
can
Like
see that,
in a
and
Maslow's hierarchy, like you
it's
first
very
need to
high.
satisfy for shelter, food, and then you climb up,
That's
and
right.
then you can invest in self-realization or research in this case. Got it.
That's
Got
right.
it.
So
That
if you
makes
see
sense.
China is pouring in so much money into research, and you'll be surprised if you see great number of Chinese universities in the next century. So that's what I'm
Correct.
saying. You look at a
Correct.
long-term picture, and looking at
Hmm.
it long-term, you'll realize that it is very important that your population gets better exposure, your population gets better experience, and you are uplifting your own population. And with the current, and we should be very happy that we are able to use the education infrastructure of other countries to
Hmm.
uplift our population. Of course, that's a very niche population which is there currently, but just imagine when they come back, there are so many more jobs that they can create. There are so many more experience that they can bring from there and
Hmm.
help the country back again. And I think Bangalore is a fantastic example of that. If you see,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think those are all excellent points. I think for me, quite significant takeaways. One was, the whole talk about internal migration, wherein we laud that we laud the fact that a lot of people from, say Mumbai. You're from Mumbai. I've lived in Mumbai, and we've seen how many people from other states, especially UP and Bihar, come to Maharashtra, maintain strong ties with their home stake, in fact even go back to vote. Uh, okay, and like they typically work and send their earnings to their home stake where the family lives. So
hmm.
I can see that aspect, but the assumption there is that if we are to extend it to the international model, then the ties between the person who's migrated and the family that is behind needs to remain strong. So in India, for internal migration, I think the ties remain very strong because the main driver for a lot of these people who migrate internally is economic. They are in search for money, and then they need that money to sustain their families. Would you say that's
Hmm.
true for education as well? And if it is true, then or not, like we can have a further discussion.
No, I think I did give that analogy, but I just, like, I was trying to explain why that, uh, how it brings upliftment of the village as well. So, like,
Correct,
as you said,
correct.
that there are strong ties with it. So I think that NRIs are more patriotic than I think we are. They would celebrate many more festivals than we do. So the ties still remain. I'm not saying that everyone's going to come back. No, not everyone is going to come back. A fraction of them come. A
Yeah.
fraction of them are going to send back things. And I would say that when you leave your country, there's always some part of you which is always there, and you want to get back with something or the other. So that I think happens. So again, it doesn't have to be 100%. It's gonna, even if a small fraction uh, do something back for the country, I think it's better. It's going ahead. It's not. It's like, what's the point if everything is enclosed and we're just trying to uh, be cut off from the world? I think you're not going to get developed. I don't think that's going to happen. Uh,
Yeah,
so
we've seen many like countries like Japan, China do that experiment. Doesn't really work well. Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just want to take this conversation to a slightly different angle. So I do agree with your point, wherein I find NRIs to be more fond of Bollywood than an average Indian. They would know all the Indian songs, they would know all the actors. They're just better at Bollywood and all the specific things which are Indian. Because for us it's Khargi Murki Gal Barabar. For them it's actually something which they left behind and it's very special to them. And the other angle that I want to bring in, which I think makes a lot of sense in this analogy, is that they don't need to just come back to India. They can contribute with their know-how. They can contribute with, bringing capital into the system. Like as you said, Bangalore is a great example because now you have a lot of Indian NRIs who are coming back and becoming part of the VC ecosystem, where they're helping connect Indian startups cap into the US liquidity. You have a lot of great thinkers. Like one of my favorite people, Balaji Srinivasan. He's CK of Coinbase and everything, vouching for India to buy Bitcoin. I mean, like I don't know if it's the right thing or not, but he's just recently come back to India, and he's already going like talking to a bunch of Indian startups, and I'm just very excited to see what ripple effect it will have. Like Naval, being that active on Twitter, it's just it's and Clubhouse. In fact, you get a bunch of Balaji and Naval did a Clubhouse with Indian founders. So that know-how is just going to accelerate our development. And a good example would be actually China. So I think a lot of people don't realize that China really grew in the 70s, especially when these East Asian countries, such as especially Taiwan, okay, especially Taiwan, but a few others as well, wherein China invited a lot of their Chinese folks who are living in these countries with capital to come and invest in China. So, in fact, one of the most famous Chinese suppliers that we all talk about, Foxconn, is a Taiwanese company. Okay, so let's not forget that the lot of the initial the flywheel for China that was kickstarted by the Chinese immigrants, if that's the right word, who decided to come back and invest in China. So I guess the point also for India is like how can we continue to grow as an economy and build favorable business models and sorry business environment so that these folks can keep coming back to India and investing in us. And nationality, I think, is having a citizenship is secondary to what everything could be. So that I think is a very interesting thought you put in. The other thing that you put in was with the education being last and the master's hierarchy. Like effectively, education is a subsequence of economic growth. If I were to understand your point, yeah, you first need to achieve economic success, and only then you can invest in good education. Until India doesn't reach there, and we're very far away from a good economic success, benchmark. It's just hard for India to invest in education, wherein there's a significant gap at primary level, like alone senior, secondary, or tertiary level that could come in. So I just want to take this and feel free to comment on my previous thoughts. But the one specific question that I have is when someone migrates internally, okay, they migrate with the objective of a job, okay, wherein they can get a better standard of living and uplift their village, okay. But when they're going abroad to study, is that the same intent? And if yes, then why do they actually study? And why not just go and get a job?
Uh, yes, you're right about that. I'm sure a lot of people would want to do that. Just go and get a job.
Yeah, and if you
Of
look
course,
at
because of
Canada
the
has this PR policy, and Germany has a work-seeking permit and things like that. So it's not like it's impossible to get a job without studying there. I know it makes it easy, but I'd love to get your nuanced opinion on this.
I think we cannot generalize the whole population in that way. That's the thing. There are a lot of people who want to, the primary purpose is education, and then they look at return on investment. That's one thing
Uh-huh.
with a lot of people. So we can't, generalize saying that everyone goes for a job or everyone is just going for education and they'll be happy to come back without any job. So I think there is a whole spectrum which lies between those two, just job and just education. Between that two is the whole thing which lies there. Again, you mentioned about Canada. People are going in, I think, huge numbers to Canada with the PR options. Again, there's again a skill-based PR that they're going for. One thing which really worries me is that there's no job growth. Jobs number of jobs are not enough to sustain the number of people that they're taking. What I mean by that is the quality of jobs. The quality of jobs. I'm not saying that number of jobs are not great, but the quality of jobs that the people look for, like a skilled person from India is going to look for, it's different. I'm talking about people who are looking to study abroad. From those perspectives, you see the number of people who go from India abroad are majorly the STEM background students.
Yes,
STEM background
yes.
students, if you see, they are majorly again engineers. If you were to look at
Mhm.
it, and as an engineer, you would want to do some work in your field after doing a master's at least, not just it's after doing a master's.
Yeah.
So in that sense, even if you were to look at jobs across the world, India has a huge population of engineers. If you and you would agree with me on that, a good number of
A bit too
Indian,
much. Yes.
yeah. So and
Two
then if
engineers
you
on this podcast. Qu'est-ce que fait?
exactly, I think, yeah, you throw a stone on a very high chance that's going to hit an engineer in India. So and if you see the best tech companies in the world are again in the US. Of course, India is doing a lot of outsourcing of them, but the major big tech companies are in the US. You can name a lot of tech companies that come to your mind. You name them, and I think they're going to be in the US. So it makes a natural sense for, and these are a lot of dream companies for a lot of people here. And the number of colleges in the US again is much higher.
Hmm.
Number of universities in the US is way higher than any other country that you can mention name.
Hmm.
There is that conducive environment for people. There's a progression that they see. There are huge number of success stories that they have seen there. There is enough demand to meet the supply. So seeing all of that, this is the route which most of the students take. Of course, Canada is increasing. I'm not saying that it's not increasing, but again, if you see uh, numbers in the US with again the STEM students, it's again US which is doing well. You're right
Hmm.
about the PR. It's just about the PR. Of course, a lot of students, people who want to just migrate, they are looking at Canada as an option, and it's not a bad option for them if they're just looking to go and settle abroad. But if you're looking at education, you would still see that US universities are still very strong for them. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you bring excellent points there, and I think we can essentially now think about breaking down this question. So first of all, like you talk about a spectrum, all right, where in one extreme end you have like people who are just purely about education, and that's a very noble cause, and they may ultimately end up doing PhD or becoming professor. And then the best
Mm.
research centers are in the West, and to be even more precise, I would say the deepest university networks in the world are in US and UK respectively. Those are the two countries with the most number of universities with good funding. And to contrast that to Australia and Canada, they have a few universities, but then they are very few, and a lot of students end up going to what's the thing? It's a degree institutions. I think you would know the name better, which are not exactly universities, from my understanding. So they're not just deep enough to accept that many international students. And in fact, I was just looking the stats last month, 15 Jan, Justin Trudeau government came up with this ambitious plan to get at least 400,000 people to Canada on permanent residency and then eventual citizenship. And those are massive numbers. And I think that's where what your point comes in when you think from the spectrum. While yes, there are some people who are looking for research, from a pure research and learning perspective, but then on the other side, people are just seeking a job and who might seek to go PR directly from India. But then if you're somewhere in the middle and you want a good job where you very upskill yourself, it's not just about getting a job. You want to upskill yourself and do a job wherein you get job satisfaction. You're able to pay off the ROI of the education. You're also able to save and uplift your family and hopefully your wider community. Then education plays a big role. And especially when you look at Canada, 400 housing, you have to be competitive. It has to be competitive. There are only limited jobs in Canada. As much as the economy is going good, it is heavily depending on energy, and the tech industry is yet to boom in Canada yet. Yes, you will find a lot of personal examples and anecdotes of people getting great jobs in Canada in the tech industry, especially Toronto and Vancouver, but they are mostly anecdotes and not a industry wide benchmark, and that is my understanding. So, me correct me if I'm wrong. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
on
you're
the
right.
yeah, so that's Canada and Australia, wherein there's a strong push by the government and a policy to encourage immigrants to come in. It's definitely Canada, but doesn't have the university system to really upskill to that level, and doesn't have the economic depth to accept so many people and yet provide them great jobs. And that's where education plays a key role. And then on the other extreme or other end is US, which has, and UK in fact, which has great university systems, but US has typically had very stringent policies, especially compared to Canada, Australia, and UK has had stringent policies but has relaxed in the past. So I definitely see these as two different buckets. Now, the key question is, I've discussed a couple of nuances. Are there other nuances between these two buckets? That's A. And number two is, if someone is thinking about study abroad, then how should they think about which is the right country for me to go abroad?
Yeah, so before I get into this, I think I'll just pick up from the comments that you mentioned. Very curious to know
Mhm.
why would you say that US has stringent policies compared to the other countries?
Oh yeah, like I definitely feel so, and yeah, we can get into a deeper discussion. So I think the one fact that I keep repeating that nobody like a lot of people don't really find reasons to disagree with me, and I'm fine, is on the fact that you have only 60 days to stay back in the country if you don't
Mm.
get a job. If you get a job, you can stay back for 12 months on OPT, and then extend another 2 years if you have the SCEM certification. But if you don't get a job in those 60 days, you have to return back to your home country. So that's one. And the second is that the whole H1B to green card journey is long and arduous, and that's something let us discuss that in depth later
Are
on.
you are you aware of the post-study visa rules in the UK, Australia, and Canada?
So
After education,
UK
how many
used to
months do you
be
have?
correct. So UK used to be 3 months, 90 days, and now they expanded to 2 years. So that's
No, I
that to
think you're
me.
wrong on that.
Oh, I'm wrong. Okay, please correct me then.
Because UK didn't have a post-study visa concept. So the thing that you're not comparing the same things. They're two different things that you're comparing. So in the
Okay, so
US,
what
when
I'm
you're comparing,
mhm.
hmm. No, what I'm saying is in
So
the
I'll
US,
just
when you compare,
okay, go ahead,
in
go
the
ahead.
US, when you're comparing the 60 days period
Uh-huh.
to get a job, that
Uh-huh.
is something which you get a job to be able to utilize your OPT. Whereas in
Correct.
the UK, the 90 days that you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
that is a job that you require not as your post-study visa, but as your tier. I'm not sure what tier does that
Tier four.
visa count as, but it's a different visa that you are paying for again. It's not on the same. So it's not similar to like in the US you're on your F1 visa and then you're continuing with your job. Whereas in the UK you are applying for a job and moving your visa status there. So that's essentially like saying that you are uh, so in any other country, if you see, you after your education, you need to apply for the work visa. Whereas in the US, you are getting that OPT period, especially for STEM degrees, 3 years without actually being going for a work visa. So I think that the comparison is not very right in that sense.
It's not the right it's not the perfect comparison. I do agree with you on that. But I can just flip it around and say that if in UK, if I get a job in 3 months, and if I'm able to convert my status to tier 4, then I'm just sorted. Like, I don't need to worry about much. I continue my employment for 5 years. I get my PR, and 12 months later, I get my citizenship. But uh,
Fantastic.
yeah, but you have to, yes, you're right, that you have to switch your from a student, you switch to a employee status on a visa. But in US, you don't do that. But having said that, if I just look at the time window wherein you have to get a job, is limited, irrespective of which student visa which you're on. But that's a
Uh,
very small technicality. Yeah, I think I would go with your analogy better, because switching a visa status is much tougher, like, even if you get a job or not.
no, so Rishabh, I love the way you explain the whole timeline. It's fantastic to hear. But the first step in that, finding that job in the UK where someone will sponsor you and give you a salary of more than, I think, 20,000 pounds. I think that's also increased right now.
27
Meaning,
used to be
yeah,
27. Yeah.
yeah. So more than that pound uh, is really difficult. So
Mm-hmm,
finding
mm-hmm.
that job in the UK or at that salary is a really difficult thing. After that, whatever you mentioned, yes, it's an easy road to citizenship or PR at least to the PR, it's easy to. But then that first step itself is so difficult. Whereas here, if you look at US, uh, your OPT, you're guaranteed. If you're doing a STEM course, 60 days, you get a job. And I don't know why you look at it as 60 days, because people essentially start looking for it in the last semester itself. So you have ample time if you're planning it properly. Of course, what it means is that you cannot stay in the country without a job for more than 60 days. And that's it's not that you cannot look for a job beyond 60 days. It's just that you cannot stay in the country without a job for 60 days. You can start looking for a job, maybe when you actually land there, and start your work on that. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in the final year, in the final semester, most of the people are already with a job, multiple job offers if you're good at it. So
Mm-hmm.
I beg to differ on that part where people say that the laws are very stringent, uh, and I would be happy to have conversation with on various countries and see the laws around that. It's just that uh, the number of people that US hosts, the number of people who are going to US from India, the number of people who aspire to be in the US is so
Mm-hmm.
high that it always comes into the focus. And you know a lot more about US than you would know about Australia, UK. UK also probably you would know now, but not much about other countries. If I were to ask you what's happening in Spain, I'm sure you would not. We would not know. All of us would not know that
I do know
that's the
Portugal
situation.
though, wherein you can get a citizenship, or it's a holiday, some very cool name, visa
No,
program.
I'm talking purely from education perspective. How from
Uh-huh. No,
education.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you're
So
right. It does come under a
uh,
lens.
yeah, and uh, same like if you look compare it with Australia, I think the policies are uh, like we talk about policies in the US, but Australia they keep changing the list, the skilled labor list. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
sure what you're gonna end up when you go there. The points might change by the time you actually apply for your PR. So a lot of changes happen there as well, Australia. So again, of course, it's a great place for people who want to move there. But I, I feel the challenges are similar. It's not very easy either in any of those countries that you're mentioning. We tend to discuss more about US is because I think all of us are so well connected with people there, and there is so much of news around it that we practically I can say that we know a lot more about the US than we would know about what's happening in a smaller town in India. So that's the reason why I think all these stringent things you find. Again, if I was to see what's happening in the pandemic, US was one of the first countries to open up students to come to US. You could get your F1 visa and fly to US. And
Yeah, yeah.
none of the other countries were open. So on that front as well, I see that. it was very student friendly in that sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again,
Hmm.
in the past administration was something which was again uh, very sentimentally it was giving you negative feelers. But again, I don't see any changes which came in from the policy perspective. Of course, there were a lot of people who backed out because of the negative sentiments, but that's not because of any kind of policy changes.
I think one interesting point that you really showcase well is that policy is you can it's hard to discuss policy in isolation. It gets subject to sentiments. It's definitely subject to economics. UK is currently having the worst recession in the past 300 years. All right,
It feels sad for them.
300 years. That's ridiculous. 300 years. Okay, worse than the 2008 financial crisis, which we thought was the greatest crisis of all time. And in fact, a few months ago, pre-COVID, UK had released this policy wherein post Jan 1st, 2021, anybody who gets a job of offered of value more than 25,000 pounds was straight away eligible for tier 4, and they make the process super easy. Okay, very easy, and if you're able to just network your way to and I'm studying in UK, so it shouldn't be too hard for me. So I was thinking about, okay, how, like if my friends are looking to go, like I just wanted to be aware of how does it actually happen. It's super easy, it's not like challenging at all, but someone has to give me that job offer. And if an economy is going through a 300-year-old worst recession, I don't know if there are many companies out there that will be able to expand and give you a job opportunity. So I think that's a very important point. And again, that comes to Canada as well, wherein you talk about, yes, they're policy wise they're friendly, but it seems like they're arbitrary. Wherein I think the most challenging fact is that they change the skill points and the essential list after you enter the education system. Is that right? Basically, you're entering into something which could you're entering into a immigration policy which can change while you're studying after you're committed to the decision to study abroad.
That's right. That's right. That's
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So yeah, so that is a challenge. But I want to keep the US discussion apart for now, because like the administration and everything, lots of juicy content to chat through. Uh, I wanted to discuss a bit more perhaps on Canada and a couple of other regions. UK we've discussed. Europe, especially Germany, is getting a bit popular among students because of free education and everything. And also thinking about from an immigration perspective, so a lot of my friends and people I've met over time have mentioned that they are not going abroad because they feel they'll be too far away from family. So are there any specific regions near India that could potentially become hubs for international education and subsequent post-work employment?
I think that's a good question about the family thing. So this I have also seen a few students come for that, uh, but again, it's very anecdotal. I've seen a lot of students who don't want to go that far, so those people would prefer going to Singapore as an option, much
Mhm.
closer, and also Hong Kong was a good choice. I would say a year, 2 years back. So those were two options which were there much closer to home. But then again, if you were to ask, I think a lot of people have family friends in the US or Canada somewhere. So everyone would know someone or the other there, even if they don't know. I think just some one or two levels apart, and they would know someone. So I think that uh, that barrier, of course, it still exists, but
Mhm.
it's not very difficult to cross the barrier if you made your mind. So again, yeah,
Mhm.
Singapore. My doubts with Singapore or Hong Kong is that how much can they absorb? They
God, yes, the key
it could
states.
yeah, it could always be a very small number if you compare it with any of these big economies.
Correct. And then UK, in fact, has created a new visa policy which allows, I think, over 70 or 80% of Hong Kongers to migrate to the new to US. Um, yeah, let's
UK
see
to
what
the UK.
happens. Hmm?
Migrate to the UK.
Yeah, yeah, migrate to the UK. It used to be a British colony, uh,
Yeah.
no, it used to be their own. They used to rule it directly, yeah, like still a colony. Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen to Hong Kong. I think it's some interesting times for them politically. Uh,
Mm.
I don't have enough information, but definitely not a place where you have enough, I would say, awareness of the future that will there be economic stability for you to prosper. So
Mm.
I want to think a bit more on Germany as well. I get mentioned that Germany has a great system of public universities which charges minimal fee. Same for Netherlands as well, but Germany is, I think, a much more deeper ecosystem of universities. And especially in the masters, like we've seen a strong interest from students who go to Germany, and you require a B1 or B2 proficiency in the language, and there are decent job opportunities as well. Berlin has become like a hub for tech, especially
Tech.
after Brexit. It has benefited a lot. I know for a fact that to a company with offices both in London and Berlin, Berlin will most likely have a better standard of living. With more disposable income, and there's a significant historical reason behind it, which we can get into if you're interested. And also, a lot of interesting innovation comes in from there. And a lot of my friends have actually moved directly from India to Amsterdam and Berlin as product managers. So product managers and techies are in huge demand there, and also a bit in Estonia, but not as much. So yeah, I was very curious to get your thoughts on study abroad overall. Like how do you see Germany continuing and Europe overall?
I think Europe has always been there. It's not going to be something which is going to go away. But I don't see it to be, the flag bearer of study abroad as well. I believe that they will always have certain number of students coming in. If I'm taking out UK away from that, of course
Uh-huh.
UK could do wonders if they were to make some changes. But yeah, otherwise, Europe as such, I think they have some fantastic universities. They have some uh, great, I would say, research facilities as well. So that's great. My point again comes down to the supply that they can provide. What are the number of
Hmm.
students that can they actually service? Even if every student wants to go there, can they take that up? I think US definitely can take it up. UK probably can do it for some good numbers. If you see a few years back, before the whole pre-visa thing, the post-work visa was shut down by UK. There were huge number of universities which were there before that. There were huge number of colleges, in fact, which had opened up just to cater to international students. So we've seen that with UK, and we've seen the perils of that as well. When you do that in not very structured manner,
Hmm.
it's not sustainable, and we've seen that. So in the Europe also, I think what my belief is that it always is going to be there. There will always be some great universities where some good students would want to go there, but it's going to be selective, and you cannot see that to be like the bellwether for the whole of UK.
Hmm.
You and it might be for some specific courses, it might be for some specific programs. You what you mentioned about the tech hub and everything is great. I think that it gives students another option also to go there. But in the near future, again, I see that if you're looking at tech, I think a lot of people would still want to prefer the US. Of course, I think there are some good number of people who are moving to, like as you mentioned, Netherlands, Germany. They're good. They're good numbers, but not something which is, I would say, like which can shift the complete dynamics.
Got
They
it.
will
Got it.
always be there nonetheless.
Got it. And I do agree with the point on, the key limiting factor perhaps there is a supply. Like you only have limited seats. But that's where I think the next geography in mind, North America, especially US and Canada, becomes very interesting to me because US has a strong history of universities, colleges, and strong education. Uh, Canada also has a few universities, but if I look at the past few years, since when Trump joined office and since Trump left office, before Trump joined, 2017 Jan, you had I think approximately equal number of Indian students in US and Canada. This is numbers on the top of the head, so I might be slightly off. But you had comparable numbers, or Canada was perhaps less. But by the
Yes.
time Trump left, Canada was more than twice of US. Okay, and that is very interesting to me because fundamentally Canada is supply constrained. So how did Canada get past that supply constraint problem and support so many international students from India specifically to support their career abroad dreams?
So today, if you look at any Canadian school, I think they do not want more Indian students. In that, and so every college was getting students at that time. So if you were to look at the same level of a college in any other country, you probably might not want to go there. But the PR was quite easy. A lot of it, the primary purpose is not education for a lot of people who are going to Canada. It's more of settling down there. So it did not really matter to them where they were going and studying. So that's
Hmm.
where hordes of students came in. So if you slice the whole population which has gone to Canada, and then you look at the actual nuances, you'll know that okay, what are the kind of people who are actually going where. So that's a very interesting thing to see. Stats are showing you a whole number. If you are to slice it into smaller, uh, more meaningful data, you'll see what where exactly the people are going, what is happening. So yeah, that's to answer that.
Correct, correct. So definitely agree there that what you're basically alluding to the fact that education is a stepping stone for these students to a better life, or changing passport, or just getting a PR, or just getting out of India, which is true with specific regions in India, such as Hyderabad, Telangana area, and Punjab area. We've seen how. They I think you would have personally seen how many study abroad consultants there are, which just help students get into universities, and a lot of them actually work on a partner success fee, wherein they take zero money from the student upfront, get them into a university, and the student doesn't realize that a big chunk of the university tuition fee is going into the consultant's pocket. So that is quite unfortunate, but yeah, I do agree with that concept. So, if I just want to juxtaposition that with the other angle we talked about, which was, a lot of Indians that go abroad are techies or STEM students or engineers. Okay, so, and I'll give you some like context that I have, wherein, especially when I and you were growing up, the common wisdom that I heard was that become an engineer, you essentially build a safety net in your life. Like you won't fall, you raise a floor. Okay, so no matter what happens, you'll get a basic income. You will be able to get a job in a country that has significant high unemployment rate, specifically in the educated segment. You'll be able to get a job. You'll be able to get the basic necessities, and then you can figure out how to climb up the Maslow's hierarchy in the professional aspect as well. But like the question for me is this whole engineering bit to me felt like there was peer pressure from everywhere to adapt to what was felt the industry or the job environment required. Okay, a lot of people would actually might be better off doing other things, and we both are great examples because we ended up not doing engineering, we're doing other stuff. Okay, and had we just thought about it from the start, we might have done better, we might not, because engineering does build critical thinking, logical ability, etc., which are core transferable skills in different places. But I think the key question here again remains for me is that this whole STEM, India supplying the STEM talent to the world, or a lot of Indians who go abroad is for STEM. Is it because Indians are inherently STEM oriented, or is it because the world needs STEM labor, or yeah, STEM talent, and that's why the country or the workforce is adopting to it?
Um, I think of it a bit differently. I may be wrong, but I come from a
Mm-hmm.
different school of thought. I think what we've grown up, uh, around this whole IT thing, and that's why we believe it this way. So if you were to look at the dot-com boom and the outsourcing boom that happened,
Mm-hmm.
the rise of Infosys and TCS and all the kinds of outsourcing which was enabled because we were an English-speaking country. Like, I would not say English-speaking country, but our English is much better than any
Cultural
other.
affinity.
Yeah. So in that sense, if you see, in the 90s, we saw huge boom of uh, people
BPO.
required BPOs and all of them would have an option of going on site
Mm-hmm.
after some time. And there was a time when I think the H-1B cap also was so much high in the US. I'm talking to specific to US at this point because we're speaking of tech. So the whole rise of the whole dot-com bubble in tech, tech, and then the whole, like, of course, the whole IT revolution that happened. I think it just started seeing a lot of examples. That's what I'm saying. Like, even in the start, when you start seeing examples around you, is when you start believing in it. And you saw a lot of people that were doing good in a private job. So something beyond government job where you were getting some good, you were making some good money, you were getting some good, quick growth. So everyone around would want more such, like, who would have some example where someone has gone to some foreign country for work because he was into IT. And that gave rise to more aspirations for people to get into the IT industry. You would see a lot of small time courses being started, like small diploma courses happening. Whole engineering colleges were set up because of this law. You'll see that it was much easier to set up a college with IT fields than to set up for the core engineering branches.
Correct.
And you saw a huge number of those people coming in. With that, of course, what happens is the barrier to enter engineering became so low that
Mm.
like you start seeing herds going there. And whenever I think there are herds going anywhere, you will find a spectrum of people, including you and me, who would not be very much interested. So it's dilution of the actual interested students who want to do uh, engineering.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because of the whole sheer volume. I think you by sheer volume, I don't think that any strata of population can have so many people who are interested in engineering just by the number of volumes that we are giving out for engineers. So seeing all of that, I would say that this is how it's not that affinity to STEM or anything of that sort. It was
Mm-hmm.
it's the middle class's belief that STEM will get you far, and they have grown up seeing that around. If you see any person who's been working in the IT field, they would vouch that it's been a great secure place for them.
Correct. Yeah, agree. I think the point you put on role models makes a lot of sense. It's just a personal story you can relate with, and they often
Mm,
share stories. These are where the opportunities are, and that inspires you. And in life, you want a lot of things, and being abroad used to be a big thing. Like I didn't have NRI relatives, but I would often,
mm,
you know, see other people
mm,
talk about how, when I was young, like, our NRI
mm.
auntie brought this, brought these chocolates, blah, blah, blah. It used to be a
Yeah.
cultural phenomena. It still is, and it's just going down the economic pyramid. The other
Mm,
point that you make, I think, was a very crucial point that I completely missed on, was from a supply of education perspective. It's just easier to set up like engineering, especially tech and computer science universities. It's just easier because the infrastructure is so less. I remember
yes.
being a mechanical student, the type of labs, the amount of effort that goes into especially
Mm,
civil engineering. You need vast space, but if
mm,
you are running a computer science, classroom, you just need
mm.
a bunch of computers. And maybe after COVID, you don't need that because everybody was forced to go and buy a laptop.
Yeah.
Uh, so even that may be redundant. So yeah, I think that was a very important point that I've never thought about. So that
Hmm.
also, so it makes sense. You had this aspiration which was primarily about, having a better life or exploring the world or getting a taste of what is
Hmm.
supposedly, a better life, a standard of living for
Hmm.
sure. And then supply
Yes.
coming in, and then yeah, you had this whole spectrum, and then yeah, like I think the moment something becomes mainstream, there will be some people who will branch out and do other stuff. So I think that I completely understand. I think before we get
Yeah.
into like the more specific US stuff, the one nuance you said was that especially in the tech you want to talk about US. Okay, so coming back to the previous question where we talked about how India has supplied a lot of the tech talent of the world, and US specifically has 2.4 million shortage of STEM talent. 2.4 million. Okay, so
Hmm.
Indians, again, if you're looking to study abroad, don't discount the US because there is significantly, there's a fundamental shortage of STEM talent. No matter how many Lambda schools or galvanized boot camps start up, there is a huge gap that we can go and tap in. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think the question is, what are some broadly popular courses that Indians choose to pursue, and if is there a geographic concentration in them? It seems like US has a concentration with STEM and say top business schools, but is there a trend you can extend to other countries?
I didn't get you. Isn't this like, are you asking about destination country or the source country?
Yeah, so if I think about destination countries and say US in particular, I think the trend that I understood
Hmm.
was that it attracts primarily a lot of STEM talent, tech
Right.
talent, and also like a lot of top business schools are
Top
there.
business talent.
And with in New York being the finance hub and everything, so you have that. But can you make like and this is like a rough generalization, to be very honest, but is there
Hmm.
like a specific trend that we can talk about other countries as well?
So I would say STEM talent is there everywhere. People are going with some STEM options. You could say
Okay.
that again because of a lot of people coming out of India who want to pursue, who have already done engineering or done some STEM related course and now want to do uh,
Mm-hmm.
masters abroad, and they don't look at US as an option. They would look at STEM elsewhere as well. But a lot of people who get left out of the non-STEM thing because of no OPT in the US doesn't make a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sense for the US because it becomes extremely expensive, even for a business school, because it's at least 2 years for students there in the US. So there you will see a lot of people move to other countries. So business courses, I would say, are doing good in all the other countries that we mentioned. You would see that
Mm-hmm.
those are primary business schools, and those are many people not coming from STEM background. Also, a lot of people are not coming with 16 years of education. Many of them are coming with 15 years of education.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
trend that's one thing which I see. There's no specific, I would say, courses apart from that. Like I think you could if you were to generalize them, you probably can generalize them to, uh, I would say, business courses.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you look at Australia or something, there are a lot of medical courses or physiotherapy and stuff like that. Not
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, maybe you would see something in Switzerland if someone's looking for hospitality, they would move there. But
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so basically, what my takeaway is that US is definitely concentrated towards STEM because of the STEM extension, which makes it easier for you to justify your ROI in those
lot of things I
programs.
would say, not just one thing, a lot of things because STEM OPT gives you 3 years extension. Now 3 years you also get a job there because of tech jobs being available. Even you just mentioned about the dearth of techies there. So because of tech jobs
Mm,
available, you get an easy route to go there. So all the puzzles fit in. So that's what makes it that's why you'll see such disproportionate numbers there. And
mm,
US also understands that because their economy requires these people. They understand that, and that's why they have done something. I think this is one of the like a fantastic move which they did was have carving that STEM OPT out and ensuring that they have a constant pool of supply of great employees.
Yeah, yeah, very smart policy, to be honest. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta give it to them.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. No, so that's a very fair point. And yeah, I think overall, as you said, there was, the policy kind of remained consistent during the Trump administration. In fact, during some of his speeches, which I don't know how literally one should take. He would talk about, moving the immigration policy to a point-based system similar to Canada and Australia. There were even bipartisan bills that were proposed, but really nothing came out of it. But there was definitely no regression in policy, and it seemed very clear that Trump, despite all his bombast and everything, had a clear distinction in between, good immigrant and a bad immigrant, wherein he felt like some immigrants come in and add value, but then who come through the proper system and say fill the scam talent gap and things like that. But there are also some people who used to come across the border without documents, and that's wherein he felt they might have been a drain on the U.S. economy. So I think he tried to make that distinction, definitely not politically correct or having that nuance in his language, but from a policy perspective, it seemed like he was not making the wrong moves when it comes to Indians. And now that you have Biden who has come in, backed by Kamala Harris, who is the VP from Indian origin, born and brought up in US, but second
mm,
generation Indian immigrant, Indian and Jamaican African
mm,
immigrant. So it seems like there's a strong there should be a strong national inclination for the administration to become more friendly towards international
mm,
immigration. That was a big part of their the whole plank on which they fought against the incumbent, as well as
mm,
just the national affinity of someone who has been through the whole immigration journey makes a
mm,
lot of sense. And that's where I came across this very interesting statement that I want to read out. And this is
mm,
by Immigrant Voice, which is a non-profit that
mm,
represents international talent in the US. Okay.
mm,
And I just want to read out the highlight and a few key points right now, and I'll mention the other key points as we go along. So the immediate release that they came up with was that and this is, I think it's slightly incendiary for a reason. If you go
mm,
into the details, it's not that incendiary. Is that the main pitch they make is immigration voice calls on Biden administration to stop issuing new H-1B visas for Indian nationals not already in the US. Okay.
mm,
So the way they have framed the statement sounds very challenging for aspirants, but that's not
mm,
actually what they mean. So I want to take a few minutes, a couple of minutes to really break this down. So what the sub points they're coming to is that uh, they make a very strong statement, which is the current immigration policy is systemic discrimination and offers a lifelong indentured servitude of immigrants from India. Lifelong indentured servitude of immigrants from India. Now, again, the word indentured has a lot of connotations, especially from the colonial times, when a lot
mm.
of indentured labor from India went to the Caribbeans and now form the cricket team or some part of the cricket team there. The next statement
In
they
South
make
Africa,
was, yeah, as well as South Africa. Durban is the highest, I think the highest or second highest population of Indians outside of
highest.
India. Yeah, yeah. So it has a very strong connotation. So again, the language of use is definitely incendiary, but just want to clarify what they actually mean. The next sentence is immigration voice demands to protect future Indian immigrants from industrialized process of wholesale exploitation. All right.
Mm,
So this statement is very important clarification that they seek to protect future Indian immigrants from this whole industrialized process of wholesale, what they believe to be a wholesale exploitation. Okay. And to back it up, they have a few facts wherein every year, 60,000 visas are offered to workers from India on H1B. 60,000.
Hmm.
And they also have their spouses and minors come in on, I believe, the H4B visa. I might be wrong. So
Hmm.
60,000 visas, but on an annual basis, get rid of discriminatory, what they believe would be discriminatory country limits. Only 8,400 Indian nationals receive an employment-based green card every year. So
Hmm.
they allow 60,000 international talent from India to work on H1B, but only 8,400. That's almost only 13% of the
Hmm.
incoming talent is allowed to be given a green card, which
Hmm.
is where
Hmm.
they feel it's a challenge. It is creating a backlog of over 1 million people waiting for green cards and a
Hmm.
wait time of over 195 years. Okay, so this is why they feel getting new people on H1B is doing injustice to the new
Hmm.
people. And first, they need to fix the fact that you have 1 million people who are who definitely, adding significant value because a lot of them work in the STEM industry. Uh, so, and they expect the fiscal year 2030 to have a line to grow to 436 years. This is ridiculous.
Hmm.
Is this absolutely insane? 436 years is just crazy. Like, I don't expect our life expectancy to go that high in such a short run. So, I'll get into the specifics later on, but broadly, I just want to get your inputs on what this immigrant voice statement means for international students.
I think what I don't. I'm actually. I've not read this or don't have a lot of experience on this part. So
Mm-hmm.
my comments might not be well researched about this. But what I understand is that it's a very subtle way of saying that you need to change your policies. I think that's that's what they're trying to say. They don't mean to say that don't have more Indians coming. It's just like saying that stop. Like this is not a sustainable way of going ahead. And they are rightly so because as it is pointed out, that number of people coming in via the H1B and number of people actually getting the green card, there is a huge uh, pool of people which are in the middle who have applied for green card and have not yet got H1, who have not yet got H1B, who have not got a green card, who are who done with I think 2 terms of H1B and have not got green card yet, who are eligible for a green card but have are in the queue. So I like how it's compared to indentured labor. I never thought of it that way. But if you look at it, maybe in the modern day, this is a new way of like tying someone to specific specific company, specific job. Because yeah, again, if you lose a job during that time, it's going to be very difficult for that person. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree on that part, and I think it's not just you and me discussing this. I'm sure there are a lot of lawmakers who are discussing. There are a lot of all the tech honchos over there discussing this,
And
and
lawyers.
yeah, a lot of them are discussing this, and they understand this, that this is a huge problem for, and it's a huge problem right now, and it's going to snowball into a much bigger problem, uh, especially because of the same reason that we discussed right now, that 60,000 and just 8,000. So it's going to snowball into a much bigger thing. And I strongly believe they will come up with a solution for that. It has to be done. It will be done. Because again, these are all good, skilled workforce that they have over there. It would not be very prudent for them to not keep them there. And a lot of them have in fact bought houses there, have kids there, raised family there. So so so
Kids
they
with
are,
American citizenship by birth.
yes, American citizenship definitely. So it is there. So they will figure something. I'm so sure of it. I trust the lawmakers to come up with a way, and I trust lawyers also to find a way where they can stay back there. Of course, it's not an easy thing, because I think anytime when you are moving from a country to another country, it's not an easy thing. You always have some levels of uncertainty. But
Mhm.
I think I'm not the right person to uh, talk
Yeah,
much about it, but I
both
can give
of
my
us are not
perspective
the
that.
right people.
Hmm.
But I guess, we can just think from the first principles perspective. wherein if I have to interject, like I think yeah, the statement that they make, etc., is very very incendiary. It's very
Hmm.
they've just positioned everything in a very controversial manner. But it is
Hmm.
based on facts, and I guess that's what marketing is. Like they've learned marketing from some really good people out there. Uh,
Hmm.
so so if I were to read some very specific points, like I
Hmm.
do agree it makes sense. Wherein if you lose a job, you just have 2 months to get a job. Otherwise, your H1B lapses and you have to go back. And then
Hmm.
they also talk about how for some stretch of the green card process, you have to be tied to an employer because the uh, employer vouches
Sponsors
for
it.
you. There are multiple green card avenues, and we can discuss that as well. So there's a whole one where you can apply on your own. Popular one being either an extraordinary ability or being an international investor. But the most common one is as a where it's an employee backed green card, which is a whole backlog they're talking about, because the other ones are
EB2,
quite
EB3, if
simple.
I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So that's the one they are mentioning. They have not mentioned that there are other segments as well, and a lot of people do get through that. It's just about how you can set up your applications correctly. But
Hmm.
the point being is that if you're going to the employee backed green card process and you're stuck to a certain employee for long stretches, often years, which means you cannot afford to lose that job. You have to stick with that job even at the expense of better opportunities. And during the whole H1B process, you cannot pursue side projects. You cannot pursue a secondary income. You basically stuck and limited to a lot of ways, which makes sense because they're not given a full permanent residency limit abilities. Uh, so I do understand where they're coming from, but is it is this sentiment strong enough? Even if we say for whatever reason this does not get fixed in the next 2 3 years, or say by fiscal year 2030, is it still a concern big enough uh, that the status quo is not as amazing as what is typically sold as the American dream?
Hmm. It's a very hypothetical thing. We'll have to see it how it comes up.
Ha,
So
because, and
if I was to look
hypothetically
at it right
speaking,
now,
like let
hmm,
me refine that statement then. Like say things continue as they're going, and then Indians are still going to the US. Okay, do you feel and okay, let me put it in a different way. And that a lot of factors will come into this thought process. Will Indians start choosing other countries even if the earlier the primary target was US? And a lot of these factors actually don't have to do with sentiments of the administration, but just the fact that their PR etc. is going to get extended for a very long time, and they have this uncertainty. And another way of thinking
so
about this question actually is what sliver or what chunk of the population that wants to go abroad, their primary job to be done is changing the passport.
yeah, that's right. I think that's the first question we need to ask. So what you mentioned, I think, is going to boil down to a lot of things again to that spectrum. That what's the person's personal choice? Where are they? What are they looking for?
Mm.
Is it to just change the passport? Is it to get a good education, good job, good career? And I think people who are going to look for good career are going to still come to US because I don't think anything else gives you that great jump start. So it's a great place to start with. Again, what you talk now, Rishabh, is once a person has stayed there for so long, and after that he thinks about all these things. If you talk to anyone here right now and you tell them that, okay, 3 years of your OPT, 3 years of your H1B first term, 3 years of your H1B second term, and that's like 9 years. And after that is what you apply for a green card. And when you are on a green card, you still are not out of the country. You're very much into the system. Then you can work for long enough. I think when you have applied for a green card, you just have in the queue to get the green card, but you can work as long. So, if you look at it from the background where students come from, when they are starting this, it looks like a very long shot for them to even think of it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
many people do not. Many people are just thinking of the next year where they have to just fly out, and they have seen Instagram posts of their immediate seniors or their friends who are showing all the fancy stuff that they're doing over there and not showing any kind of struggles behind. So it in this world of vanity, everything else is, everything is taken back, and you try to imagine yourself doing that stuff next year and not thinking so deep. I think again, what's going to happen? I feel that we have seen far too many success stories. Now, when you start seeing anything any a failure story very close to you, is when things will start going other way around. Again, it's going to be like, if these huge population which is there, if something bad was to happen, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we'll see a huge immediate shift. Otherwise, it's going to be like, a lot of world actually does not run statistically, but runs very anecdotally. So people are going to again look at what stories that they have heard, what stories that they have like, what success they have seen, what failures they have seen, and make their judgment basis those only. So it's not going to be very. I don't think unless, as I said, like the administration decides to do something really, I would say, audacious, and do something like really different. I don't see this trends to change so quickly. And again, because if this thing continues and you start seeing uh, issues coming out of people, that will percolate down, and that is where people will actually start seeing those things happening, and then that changes will come. So you will see issues coming out everywhere. The struggle is real everywhere. If you're settling in another place, uh, you need to be prepared for that. It could be any other country as well. Maybe Canada gives you a great PR. You're going there, but what about a great job after that? The struggle is still there. You just the thing is that you're not worried about being kicked out of the country, but you're worried about kicked out by your landlord if you don't pay up the rent on time, and if you don't earn that thing on time. So the struggle is going to be there. The struggles are different, I think, in different places. So it's again going to be, what people are up for, what people are hearing, and what they're comfortable with. From my
Mm-hmm.
experience, what I'm seeing right now, I see that, of course, like social media, as I told you, is a great influencer for a lot of people. And when you see some people buying their BMWs, or in fact now Teslas, you try to imagine yourself doing the same thing. So I think this dream is going to still stay for a long time.
Got it, got it. I think there's a very sobering part of the conversation. Like just two things that really stood out for me. One was that consumer psychology is often very different from thinking about policies, etc. They just think more about, what are the potential aspirations I can have and can achieve those or not. So that's a very interesting point Gary brought in. I'll discuss about the second one later. But if I were to ask you, uh, on this whole consumer psychology bit, and let's let it be. The one thing you said is like there might be something audacious that might impact negatively. Assuming that does not happen because it's a pro-immigrant, uh, like the talk has been a lot of pro-immigration reform at least. What are a couple of things alongside removing the country cap that the Biden administration could do potentially to just make life easier, which may not come up on Instagram per se, but just while when actual students go through the journey, it just makes it easier for them.
I think country cap is a good place to start. Maybe point-based system would be a win-win for everyone, because
Mm-hmm.
that would ensure that you're getting quality uh, workforce coming in, and so you're controlling the quality. And I think that would help the companies over there also to get some great talent um, directly. So I think point based would be a great progression, and I think it should happen much uh, sooner.
Yeah, I think these two things would just make life so much easier. You would not
Hmm.
have the uncertainty of H1B. I think you might also know people, but I know a few people who have gone through the whole 3 years of H1B scam and still not got the lottery. It's just unfortunate folks had to come. They're doing great in India, but still had to. So that lottery, sorry, the
Right?
point system.
Those. So I think we should be fortunate that those are the people who are getting the brain gain back here. So I'm,
Yes.
and I'm sure they're doing fantastic here back. And there are a lot of people who are moving back out of choice, not out of this compulsion. I know people who have had H1Bs and have surrendered and come back uh, purely because they found the opportunity to be great over here as well. So I think the brain drain, what we started with, I am a
Uh,
strong believer that this is a brain gain thing. This is a very much brain gain thing. If we were to think of it as a brain drain thing, I think we would be moving ourselves back by a century if we were to look at it that way.
Got it. Yeah, completely agree. And I do want to talk about that with a couple of interesting talking points from the past 12 months. The one thing that you mentioned, the sobering bit, was like everybody has their own struggles. And like I can completely understand, like if you might get a PR, but if you don't have money to pay for your ring, what's the point of the PR? What are you going to do with it? So that is very interesting. What do you think are some, usual or the better way of putting it is just like you have the Instagram life, which looks cool and everything, that which is augmented. Actually, it's made even worse by the YouTuber life, wherein they actually edit and curate the very best moments of their life. So
Moments of
you
their
have
life.
yeah, so yeah, and create a craft a narrative on it, while Instagram can still be raw. So you have that, okay. But then what's the flip side of it? What are some of the dark challenges that people don't talk about? So I can say, for example, I've had a few students who have approached and talked through depression, especially when the job seeking process is long. It's challenging, and Indians are not used to it. Indians are used to companies coming to campus and jobs being put on a platter. So that is one. The other is, the whole day and night thing in winters, where people don't get used to sunsets at 4 p.m. And sunrise at 9 or 10. So those are a couple of things that I've seen. But what are some other, instances that you've known? The dark side of studying in US.
I think you mentioned it well. I would not say it as dark side. I would say it as the adaptability, the the difference. It's not. I would not call it as dark. I would just call it as a different way of life which exists there. So you said it right about the placement that it's on your platter here. But I would say that everything else is also on platter here. If you're coming from a slightly privileged part of the society, I think everything is on a platter for you.
Mhm.
Especially the food. You are actually served food on the platter here. You have someone who is making food for you and giving it to you every day. I think that is a big shift for a lot of people when they go there. They realize that they have to cook food themselves, and then you start realizing that fresh food is such a great luxury when you start storing food for a week and keeping, and realizing that how not to waste food because you have to cook it yourself, and then you start realizing all the other things which are related to that. I think a lot of household chores is something which people don't see. I don't think you will see a lot of people putting up their YouTube video of how to do utensils, or they will not put up a Instagram story of so much of washing, so much of cleaning. These are very basic things which we've taken like granted over here. It's purely because of that. I don't blame anyone for that. I think it's just the way of lifestyle which exists here and which exists there. So that shift is something which people adapt well, some people don't adapt well. Depression, I think, again, if the mental health issues are so much nowadays, it might occur even here. There, you just the triggers may be big because you're leaving your comfort zone, you're leaving your sanctuary, your family, whom you can consider as your sanctuary for a lot of people. you're leaving that and going. So it might just aggravate. But again, I think all of these are a different lifestyle which you have to get adjusted to. The faster, the quicker you get adjusted, you will make through it. So I would not call it as the dark side. I would just call it as the difficult adjustment part, which some people do it
Hmm.
easier than others. And again, if you want to achieve something great, you will have to go through this in any aspect. I would say that does not limit it just to studying abroad. But if you are aspiring to, or if you are aspiring to ride that Tesla, this is something which you will have to go through.
Yeah, no,
And
no pain.
yeah, I think this is something which is, if it was easy, everyone would have done it. And by sheer, I think, supply demand thing, you would find that it's no more lucrative.
Correct. Yeah, you would no longer aspire to something which you can easily get. That's the whole definition.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I do agree with your tweaking. I think I was leading more towards things you don't see on Instagram. So yeah, definitely like the household chores. You don't see that, and I think the more important bit is that it takes a strain from your life. You have to dedicate a good 2 hours just to cook and maintain washing, clothing,
And
ironing.
that's again, sorry to interrupt, but that's again because you are not used to it. It's not that it's good, because if you were to see anyone who's been living there for long would know that this is the normal life. This is not something which is a struggle. It's a normal
Mm.
thing which you've accounted for. Here, probably not used to this life. That's why we feel that.
Yeah, we have to make too many adjustments at the same time.
Hmm.
Mm, mm. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah, no, I think this whole I think the keynote that you hit at the end was that it's an aspiration. An aspiration is often just an aspiration. It does not have to be really driven by logic. It's a thing that you desire, and a lot of desires in life are about you know things which can't be explained by logic. But overall, it does make sense. People want a better standard of living. People want a better status, and I think the most interesting study results that I've tried to apply in my life is that people are the most happy when they earn slightly more than their friends. Not too much because then it ruins a friendship. If it's less, then there's jealousy. Slightly more, yeah. There's a sweet spot there, according to the research. But I guess that's where people really love their life, and yeah, for a lot of people going abroad, studying, perhaps changing the passport, being part of a different place, a different environment, a different professional environment, working at top companies is a very compelling uh, opportunity. But I do want to juxtaposition it with the last bit of this conversation, and thanks for having this detailed interactful conversation. Is that COVID, I think, has fundamentally changed a few assumptions. Uh, some of the impact will be seen deeply in the short run, and then there'll be resistance in the medium run, and then eventually the world will move towards it. And one of the assumptions is that you need to be at the same place to work together. A lot of companies have already, declared work from wherever you want. I think yeah, it was first carried by Quigger and Square, and then recently also another company came out with the statement. I think Spotify, like work from wherever, whichever place you want, whichever country, and we'll give you the same salary, which is basically incentivizing people to move to a lower cost of living country,
Yeah.
which is great for their economies, more cash inflow. But I guess talking from a perspective of techies in India, seeking to work in top companies, challenging projects, interesting opportunities, or just getting access to jobs with higher package, as blunt as that. Uh, there might be a greater, flexibility amongst companies to offer jobs to Indians, even if the company is not based out of India. So in the short run, there are some startups in India such as Pesto, which is deeply focused towards bridging that cultural gap. and skills gap amongst Indians and connecting them and getting them employed in the Silicon Valley and other places. But that's in the short run and it's just small pockets. How do you feel this will move in the medium to long run?
A lot of things to process. So my first thing is that I want to get hold of the research that you spoke of about the earning more than friends. So please share that with me. That's the first thing
Yes,
which I
yes.
would want that. About working and all, I think I think I'm not someone expert on this matter to give a lot of opinion about it. What I have seen, I can just talk about what I have seen around or what I believe it. I believe that predicting future is a very difficult thing, and people who are into the business of this also don't do it right. So I think it might not. I might be able to give my perspective on one side, but uh, future is a function of a lot of parameters and a lot of unknowns, which which we might even know. It's a lot of unknowns as well, as I said. So
Mm.
it's going to
Yeah,
be a lot of things. There are a lot of things which go into it. It would be very foolish and naive on my part to say that this is the future, because I think none of us can very well predict it. So I think if things stay similar to how it is now without a lot of change, then
yeah.
you're right. A lot of people would want to move back to smaller, cheaper places to work. And you saw a lot of that shift happen from California as well. But very interesting thing is that when COVID was just starting out, you saw a lot of people saying that it's work from home is going to be the thing. Everything's going to move online, and today you see a lot of fatigue coming in from there. So what I can say is that one thing which COVID would have changed. I'm not just saying it's for working, but for everything is what you cannot do online more
Mm-hmm.
than anything. You just know that these things these things will not work online is something which we've come to know. And given an
Mm-hmm.
option, people would want to go back to some of these things. I would say that traveling. I think traveling. If you could see the pent up demand, it's it's great. Like things things will change. Some things will change. Some things will not change. And some things will take a totally different course. Which I think we what we saw during the whole COVID this thing with
Mm-hmm.
almost every industry was very tactical change because of such they had to move mountains in such a small time. So what
Mm-hmm.
you saw was very tactical, not strategical. Not nothing was strategic. Now what we see, which is going to happen in the next few, I would say a decade at least, is going to be very strategic thought of decisions. And there we will see a lot more uh, like we would see what works, what does not work. What you mentioned about working from anywhere, I'm sure there would be certain jobs you would have realized that working from anywhere makes sense, but there would be certain jobs you realize that you want to do those things on face to face in one to one. So again, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it works. What's not going to change is going to be something very important, and I think that we would have we would realize about that much more in this phase than what's going to change.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that broad analysis, and like in the short term, it's tactical shifts. Then fatigue comes in with the tactical, and that's when you have the time in the medium run to think about strategic changes, which will have you know you know behavioral changes for us in the long run. So completely aligned there. I guess perhaps we can think more on the online education space, which has been happening for many years. We have known a lot of universities offer online degrees, and they never really took traction because a lot of the people, as you said, were actually excited by that Mustang or Tesla that they're driving on, the what's the Pacific Road, a beautiful drive from SF to
Napa,
uh, yeah, Napa Valley, and then there's another one along the coast. with stunning cliffs and everything. That's what people want to do. That's the dream that they want to live. And often the dreams were outside of their home country. They saw the home country or the environment already, which is. But now that all of this has shifted, what do you think about online education? And there's a lot of talk about edtech in India. All of that is good, but specifically more on uh, the things that we understand, which is international education delivered online. Oh, did we lose you? Oh,
No, no,
yeah.
no, I'm there. Yeah. I think this is a conversation I've been having with almost everyone uh, since the pandemic or even prior to pandemic. I don't have a very, I think, and the more the time passes, I don't think my opinions start to dilute further. But I think the international education is as much about experience as much about learning. So there are a few things which can be done online. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge part, what you talk about, which can be done online, that can be transferred online knowledge. And there is something which is called, which is, I think, experience, which I would say includes everything with your labs, with your engagement with your colleagues, your classmates, and also the experience of the campus. So the knowledge part can be done online, but the experience part, the engagement part, what we talk about,
Mm-hmm.
cannot be done online. And I'm a strong believer
Mm-hmm.
of that. So
Mm-hmm.
there, I feel what might rise up is going to be a hybrid level, which, in fact, prior to pandemic, I did the propose to a couple of universities. Some of them were interested, but I think a lot of them moved to that model post pandemic because that had to be done that way. And and unfortunately, I think a lot of them would have failed on this project because it was done again as very tactically. You started to
Mm-hmm.
move your classes online, so you never designed those classes for online. You tried to move everything online. So basically, what you tried to do is you tried to bridge the gap of geography by just a video and not actually harnessing the technology for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I feel a lot of scope is going to be coming in the next few years, where you would have suddenly realized that what are the gaps which are present in just video streaming, which can be plugged in, and that's where I feel there will be a lot of innovation that will come from the education part,
Mm-hmm.
where universities have started to realize that they cannot just uh, go completely online or completely offline. There has to be a much more like something what students prefer. I would say not. It's not a cookie cutter thing which suits everyone. So you might have to come with a more personalized approach. And I strongly believe hybrid more because if you take out uh, the experience, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
people would want to do that international. Like I think there are so many. Like uh, I really don't believe that there is dearth of content right now. If you want to learn, it's
Oh yeah, yeah,
excess. It's excess overload of content right now.
yes.
So if all that you're going to give me is a poorly produced video, I can go to YouTube and find much better produced video for the same content. I cannot pay that huge amount to you just for this specific video.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think the first image that comes to my mind is like meme, which I don't agree with, but it's still funny. Is how they talk about the most expensive streaming services, wherein you first have, I
Yeah.
think, Hotstar, and then Netflix, and then you like Harvard Business School. Which I mean, I don't agree with it, but it's just memes are funny. So
Yeah.
that makes, I think the point makes a lot of sense. I do completely agree that a good example would be a lot of content, a lot of lectures can be async or asynchronized. They can just be recorded. I can attend at any point of time. I don't need to go to a lecture and do it at the same time with others. Or even if I do it, I still want the recorded lectures because I want to go back and just revisit and revise my learnings. And then your actual Q&A can happen during one-to-one or like one to few tutorial hours that can happen in the professor's office or a teaching assistant can take up. So yeah, I think a lot of fundamental shifts to how education will be delivered. But yeah, like I think everybody talks about uh, especially in B school, this is, I think, the key selling point of the schools is that you become a part of a network and you learn by doing, you learn by being on campus, by doing activities on campus. It gives a strong focus on curriculars. There's not as much on the masters in tech space because the academics are very demanding, but then all of them do talk about the importance of networking because that's what's going to take you forward. In the US, it
Mm,
starts from day zero, as in your first job after campus is also through networking. But even anywhere in the world, after your first or second job, nobody's going to come to you and offer a job, or if they come to you, it's because they know you for some reason, which is a network. So
mm,
you have to keep building the network, and a strong network is built in schools and universities. So there's just no competition to it right now. But I think it would be very interesting to see how tech companies think about replicating the networking back online. But that's something we'll have to wait and watch. So overall, I think I really enjoyed this whole conversation. We started off with brain
same
drain,
here.
and yeah, like and discussing and navigating through some of the policy big. Really love the discussion on the motivations for study abroad, and just thinking through various countries. And the last bit on the additional bit on the COVID impact, which I think this becomes a part of every conversation because you just can't avoid it. Uh, and we've been doing this for over 90 minutes, so I guess it's a good time to conclude on the podcast. But before we do the actual conclusion, do you have any last parting thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
Mm, no, I think I can go on and on. So uh, yeah, there's
That means you're
no.
invited to another podcast. We'll do another
Oh,
episode on
for
some
sure.
topic.
I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
I'll be more than happy. But yeah, I can go on and on. So there's nothing specific I want to talk about it. If there is anything that anyone in the audience want to ask, they can always leave a comment, and if I see it, I will come back and answer it as well. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
All right, that is beautiful. And my concluding thought is that if you are looking to study abroad, definitely go check out Yocket. They have a website and an app, and I think it's the largest community anywhere for study abroad. And they've been doing some fantastic work. It's been a pleasure for me to observe their journey over the past 5 years now. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, almost 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so it's
15,
just
yeah, 5 years.
yeah, yeah. So it's just been it's been a great journey to observe from the sidelines, and always a great person to tap into whenever I want to have nuance and deep conversations. So yeah, to me, it will see you again here.
Yeah, great. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Rishabh.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah.
Have a great one.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much
Bye.
for joining me. Bye bye.